Security Coaches is a cybersecurity consulting company, and we help businesses with cybersecurity. We specialize in various training programs and assessments of organization cybersecurity policies, help them come up with procedures. We work very closely with IT departments. Our team has extensive background in corporate IT. My personal background spans into that, aerospace and defense, and a number of other areas. So we wanted to put this together to kind of help people with what's going on in the world. I'm sure a lot of you are working remotely. Maybe you did before, maybe it's something new, but a lot of companies have kind of been thrown into this remote working situation, didn't really have much time to prepare or train people. So we figured this is something we can do to kind of help give some tips to keep people out of trouble, and it's one small contribution we can make given the current climate of things. So the threat environment, this is something we monitor on a daily and weekly basis. There are various government resources we monitor along with private resources. Bad actors are adapting very, very quickly, and times of uncertainty and panic and crisis are very advantageous for criminals and bad actors. So they're going to take advantage of the fact that people maybe don't follow policies as quickly or as strictly, or maybe aren't thinking as clearly and are in kind of a state of disarray. So that makes it ripe for cyber attacks, especially when exploiting human behavior. There are specific targets at home and remote workers. So there's been an increase in a lot of the telephone-based social engineering attempts. There has been an increase in targeting cloud platforms. So if you're working from home and you need to log into Office 365 or one of the public cloud platforms, there's been a lot of phishing attempts to capture your credentials to those resources. And cyber criminals know that IT resources are very overwhelmed right now. So if there wasn't a good remote working capability in place, then the IT departments that normally would support you in determining if something is legitimate or not aren't as responsive. So people get impatient and they click on things that they shouldn't, or create incidents that IT just can't respond to as effectively right now. So those are all things to be aware of from what we're seeing in the threat landscape. So just keeping a high level of general awareness helps. That's not the only thing to do, but it makes a big difference, because you are often the first and last line of defense, because all the technology in the world, all the anti-malware software, all the security and firewalling can't stop you from clicking on things that you shouldn't click on. So you've got to keep that in mind, that you are the first and last line of defense in some situations, in many situations. If you work, especially in finance or senior level of management where you're conducting financial transactions, validate those various activities through trusted channels. So especially in this landscape, if you get an email from the president of the company telling you to wire money to a vendor, or your procurement person asks you to do that, take the time to make that double check phone call if you don't already have a procedure like that in place. And just make sure that that's real and not spoofed, because we've seen a lot of that happen. Some of our current and former clients have fell victim to wire fraud through spoofed emails asking someone in an accounting department to wire money somewhere that was illegitimate. So be very careful with that. If you are in the small business space, or even at a personal level, be aware that there are a lot of fraud activities beginning around the COVID-19 assistance program. So the federal government legislation hasn't even officially passed yet, and there are already bad actors out there creating fraudulent false resources that capture your personal and financial information. So try to stick to official websites that end in .gov. Those are usually pretty safe, and directly input them into your address bar. Don't click on links that come through emails. Don't click on links from other websites. Directly input those into your address bar, and make sure you're using the officially published links for a lot of those resources. So that's going to be a common vector that we'll see, especially after this congressional financial package rolls out. There's expected to be a lot of fraudulent activity around assistance programs. So be very careful when you're applying to those. In general, social engineering attacks are on the rise, as I mentioned earlier. So the criteria you see on this slide are criteria that the bad actors will use. So if somebody calls you or emails you expressing any of those types of pressures or urgency, fear and intimidation and so on, be very, very skeptical of that. And again, do that double check. Make sure that whatever transaction somebody's asking you to engage in is actually legitimate. So if someone emails it to you, pick up the phone, call their cell phone number or another trusted number and validate it. So specific to the working from home elements of all of this is creating a cyber secure home. And there are numerous steps that you can take to help secure your home network, because in most cases, your IT department probably had nothing to do with configuring your home network. So there can be risks there that often go overlooked. So if you read the Security Coach's website, or if you've seen things on our LinkedIn page, we talk about passphrases rather than passwords. So longer strings of characters with complexity to them, including punctuation or special characters, use those instead of standard passwords. So on your routers or modems or Wi-Fi infrastructure at home, log into those, change the administrative credentials. Don't leave the default passwords that are published in your startup manual for those. Go change those to strong passphrases as soon as possible. That's a very simple thing. A lot of those devices also have what's called a remote management capability. Disable that. There's very few cases where anybody as a home user needs that, and that just creates an additional security risk. So disable remote management interfaces. Two-factor authentication. So if you've ever logged into a banking website, it's very common in banking and financial services companies. Two-factor authentication is where you have to get a text message that has some type of code that you have to then put into that website, either just before or after entering your password. That's a two-factor authentication. So any service that you have where you can enable that, we highly recommend that. So the password for your wireless network, maybe it's your dog's name, maybe it's your cat's name, maybe it's your kid's name. All of those are bad passwords. So again, emphasizing the use of passphrases rather than passwords. Change those. Make them something strong that includes uppercase, lowercase, punctuation, and so on. Apply updates to all of the devices connected to your home network, including smart TVs and everything else. It's usually very easy. You can go in through a menu that's usually pretty simple. A lot of the devices will nag you about it too. How many times have you turned a smart TV on and it says it wants to apply an update, but you're in a hurry to get to that Netflix binge, so you don't apply it? Well, take the few minutes and apply that, and make sure all those devices are up to date. Believe it or not, there are hacking vectors that occur through TVs and all kinds of things now. So update everything that you can. Don't share the administrative credentials to your wireless router or modems with anybody else in your household. If you're the person that's mostly working from home, don't give that password to your kids, or if you have someone else living in your household, maybe an elderly family member or somebody. The elderly probably don't do too much with reconfiguring wireless networks, but keep those administrative credentials safe. And use a separate guest Wi-Fi network if possible. If you have TVs or other devices that all you do is stream Netflix or other media with them, put them on a guest network. Keep them off of your main network. And on my next slide, I have a very rudimentary illustration of this. So An SSID is the network name that you see pop up. So if you open up a device and it asks you what network you want to connect to, each network that you see is called an SSID. So usually the guest network and the main network, a lot of people might refer to it as, those are actually separated. So if you look at this diagram here, what's on that guest network cannot talk to what's on the private network. So keeping those devices separated that are higher risk is a very good practice if your wireless router has that capability. If it doesn't, then this isn't an option for you. But we recommend using this where it's an option. So if you can create a separate guest network, we strongly recommend doing that. So securing your work resources when you're working from home. Use your company issued devices for work purposes. So try to avoid logging into work resources from your home PC or personal devices. I know many companies have a bring your own device policy, it's called. If they've approved that, that you can use certain personal devices for work, then that's fine. We'll assume they've done the diligence to make sure that they're doing that in an appropriate manner. But otherwise, avoid using personal devices for work purposes. And make it clear to family members or others in your household that they should not be using your work devices for anything. That is for you to conduct your business activity. That's not for playing games. It's not for personal types of usage, especially from other people. So be very protective of those. We recommend setting up a password or login protected screensaver that activates after 5 minutes of inactivity. If right now you're tending to children at home or pets or anything like that, it can be easy to get distracted at times, and we recommend that after 5 minutes that automatically locks your screen so that nothing bad accidentally happens. Maybe a child comes and bangs on the keyboard and accidentally deletes important files, or clicks on something that causes malware to get on your machine. You just never know what can happen. So keep those devices secure. We also recommend locking your computer when it's unattended. So if you're using a Windows machine, if you hold the Windows key down and press the letter L, that will lock your computer. It's a shortcut key. So we recommend doing that every time you walk away. But just in case you forget, if you're not in the habit of that, set a 5-minute screensaver that locks it for you. Something that gets very easily overlooked is physical security with company devices. So if you have a work laptop or other devices, try not to leave them sitting out in the living room where, maybe you have the screen door open if it's nice out. We're starting to get some nicer weather. Maybe it's sitting right on that end table by the front door where someone could walk up and grab it and you may not even notice. So just be aware of that and try to secure the company devices so that it does deter family members from trying to use those and potentially damaging them, or if it wasn't secured properly with a password, affecting your work. You don't want people accidentally messing up things associated with your work. So some of this is security and some of it's accidents too. So these are all good practices for a variety of reasons. Most companies have some type of VPN that you should be using when you're accessing company resources, so please use that. Use that at all times if you have one. And in general, carefully follow instructions that are provided by your IT department. If you don't have instructions from your IT department about working from home, ask for them. They may have well-written policies and procedures that simply weren't distributed. That happens sometimes. And also ask them what you should do if you think you have a cyber incident. So just be aware of those different procedures that exist and ask for them if you're not familiar with them. So conferencing, this is a big one. So we're web conferencing right now, right? So first of all, use a company issued or company approved conferencing solution. I know it's very easy to just go sign up for an account with various web conferencing providers, but first check and see if your company has a specifically approved solution for this, or maybe they have a corporate account that leverages a discount, and if you go buy it on your own and maybe use the corporate credit card, you may end up wasting money too. A lot of companies, I used to run IT departments, and a lot of times we had spare conferencing accounts on the corporate account. So you might actually be wasting your company's money by not checking with them first. And these platforms may not be as private as you would expect them to be. There are differing privacy policies, there are different recording policies, there are varying degrees that personal information is collected, and believe it or not, some of them, especially on the free ones, they have to monetize that. So they will sell data about your meetings and about who joined your meetings and about the topics discussed in order to subsidize the free platform. So free is never free. So you want to make sure that you're sure of what their policies are about what happens with shared images, video, transcriptions. A lot of these platforms have automated transcriptions. And even if you're not recording it, they might be. So just be aware of all those things. These are all things to be careful about. And one very big issue that comes into play is transmitting files. So a lot of the conferencing platforms have a way to send people files to participants. And that sounds fairly harmless on the surface, but there are varying degrees of encryption and, again, privacy policies that may or may not apply to protect those. So we strongly recommend against using file transmission services that go through web conferencing platforms. Please send files through other channels, even corporate email systems where it doesn't leave the inside of your network and is accessed over VPN is oftentimes better than some of the web conferencing platform file sharing solutions. So, for example, the conferencing platform that we're using for this meeting right now is the Security Coach's corporate phone system. So as part of our sister company, AI Services, we install these telephone systems that are all IP connected and have capabilities. So this system actually resides in a physical data center where we have a presence, so we have full control over it, and there's no third party involved in it at all. So that's the type of diligence that we've done for our internal conferencing solution. And your IT department likely does something similar and has considered what's appropriate for the company. So again, it comes down to who has control of your account and the data associated with it. And that's probably the biggest consideration in a nutshell. Also, be aware of what's in the background when you're doing a video call. So if you look behind me, I was very intentional about what was behind me when doing a video call today. So you want to be careful if you have whiteboards, bulletin boards, or other things in the background when you're doing video calls right now, especially if you're doing them with external parties. If you're on calls with customers or other people that maybe shouldn't see internal information, or there's just simple personal privacy concerns too, because you may not want people to see, what books are on your bookshelf or, anything like that. So just be very careful with that. So in summary, take the steps to cyber-secure your home as much as possible. Someone's telling me, can everyone hear me okay still? Someone's telling me they lost a connection. You guys hear me okay? Can you type in the chat and let me know? Okay, someone lost a connection there. Okay, I think we're good. So in summary, cyber secure your home, take those steps that I mentioned with your wireless device configuration, your wireless router and so forth. Update your devices and be very protective of your company's equipment. Follow any guidelines that your IT department has provided and maintain that constant awareness, especially right now, of threats and all of those different vectors that we mentioned. And I see Stephanie has a question here. She's asking how she can encourage colleagues to use their VPN. She emphasizes the importance In that case, I would recommend probably explaining to them what a VPN does. We can put together some material for you, Stephanie, that just has a very simple explanation that might get people to understand that. Also, I know that a strategy that some IT departments use is there are resources you just simply can't get to if you're not logged into the company VPN. So you kind of have to do it to be productive. But sure, yeah, we'll put together a simple VPN explanation document. We have some material on that. We'll send it out to the group here. Oops. So is there any other questions that anybody has about anything? Okay, well, hearing no other questions, we'll wrap it up here. So we hope all of you stay safe and healthy. We hope this whole thing passes as quickly as possible, but we're in it together. So the best we can do is try to stay secure and healthy and safe. And if you want some more free tips, follow us on LinkedIn and visit our website. We try to put some type of various tips and information out on a weekly basis, just to kind of keep people up to date on what's going on in the security world. And I think that's about it. So we'll send out that follow-up information on the VPN usage. And oh, Mike left a comment here. He did make a good point. Close any applications that you're not using. That's also something that we recommend. So as you're done with various applications on your PC, the less applications that are running, the less risk you have. So that is another good tip. Thank you for that, Mike. All right, well, stay safe. And if there's any topic that you think would be helpful, feel free to let us know. We're looking to put on some more webinars like this. So it's something we'll continue to do and try to continue to be a resource. So if you think of anything, feel free to connect with us. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of the day and a good weekend. All right, bye-bye.